Hi, welcome back to Mind Shifting Monday with Mitch. My name is Mitch Weisberg, and today we're going to be talking about giving feedback or giving suggestions that don't piss people off, or feedback that's welcome instead of feedback that triggers a fight. Please ask any questions in the comments, or give us some examples of where you've either given or received advice or feedback that was either effective or ineffective, and we'll bring those up in the session. So I'll start off by just going through some real world examples of feedback, and some of these we faced from the person receiving the feedback, some of these we faced from the person giving the feedback. But let's start with, let's say, a workplace example. We're walking down the hallway, and our boss comes up to us and says, "We need to talk about your performance." And what do we immediately do? Okay, we don't look at that as saying, "Wow, this is a great chance for me to improve." Right? It's like, okay, what did I do wrong? Our minds go into fight, flight, freeze. Like, what did I do wrong? What's the shoe that's going to drop? And when we do this to somebody else, it's the same thing. Like, okay, I need to talk to you about your performance. Let's say we're a principal and we're talking to a teacher, or we're a superintendent and we're talking to a principal. I need to talk to you about your performance. It's going to trigger the same type of reaction. And what we may want to do may be something that's going to be very helpful. But once we have that reaction, the whole flavor of the conversation changes. Or let's consider a home example. We're home and our spouse says to us, "You never help with the dishes." Okay, and what do we do? Okay, when we hear that, it's like, something. I work hard all day, or I do this, or I do that, and I never get any credit. Or we may be in the process where we've cooked the entire meal, the dishes are sitting there, the other person is not doing anything, and it's like, I need you to help with the dishes, and just a statement with a certain tone of voice is going to trigger the other person to react. Or many of us have kids, and they could be a teen, and we ask about their homework, like, "Have you started your essay yet?" Now, we may be asking that from a point of concern, and yet we ask that and they storm out of the room, and it's like, you never listen to me, you never care about what I'm doing, and they slam the door. So the common thread in all of these is that in less than a second, the heart rates rise, breathing becomes shallow, and the social brain, or the sage brain, shuts down to make room for the survival brain, or what we called the limbic brain. Let's just go into the biological why. And uh, the first thing is to understand is that what we're experiencing, or what the person experiences in those cases, is a limbic hijack. And before our thinking brain wakes up, before we're conscious of language, before we're conscious really of what's happening, our limbic brain picks up that we've been judged or criticized, and our amygdala signals a threat. And once we feel that threat, our brains get flooded with stress hormones, uh, I guess cortisol and adrenaline, and we lose access, or the other person loses access to logic, empathy, and creativity. Now, that then reaction from a person who is receiving feedback then causes them to say or do certain things, and then we react to that, and the situation escalates. And the reason that the situation escalates is due to something in our brains called mirror neurons. Now, mirror neurons are really what allows us to learn from others. We watch other people do something, it's as if we're experiencing it, and we learn from it. It allows us to identify as part of a group. So the advantages um, are that If we're around people who are calm and empathetic, we're calm and empathetic. If we're around people who are focused on their work, we're focusing on our work. If we're around other people who are creative, who are competent, who are doing things well, we're observing and we're copying them, and we're doing the same thing. Mirror neurons are part of what has made human beings kind of the alpha species on the planet. But those same mirror neurons also have a downside, like a dark side, if you will. And the disadvantage is it creates this spiral where we sense that another person is attacking us, and that then triggers us to attack or to run away or to avoid. And then when we're attacking, run away, or avoiding, that their mirror neurons pick up that, and then they do it a little bit more, and then we do it a little bit more, and we end up in this limbic loop where nobody is actually listening. And that's really the default mechanism for so many of the times that we're giving advice to people or giving suggestions to people, is that we say something, and what their neurons pick up on is this person is judging me, or this person is attacking me, or this person is thinking that what I'm doing isn't good enough, and then they attack back, and we pick up, our neurons pick up, this person is attacking me, I've got to attack back, and it just escalates it. That may be our default way of operating, but it isn't. But as people, as human beings, we have other capabilities. We don't have to follow those mirror neurons into that spiraling conflict that so often happens. We can resolve ourselves to react differently. And we generally do that through something that we've talked about in past sessions, that self commander. The self commander consists of three different operations. The first part is self awareness, or metacognition. And in self awareness or metacognition, that's where we notice our internal state. And sometimes just noticing that we're in a limbic mode, that we're in fight or flight or freeze, is enough to free us from it. Oh my gosh, I'm in limbic mode right now. I don't have to be that way, and then I can respond calmly. I can respond with empathy. Very often, that metacognition is not enough on itself, but it's necessary for a first step. And as a second step, we have to calm our brains down, and it takes 30 to 90 seconds to flush uh, the uh, the stress hormones from our brain. And so we have to shift our focus away from what's stressing us out for somewhere between a few seconds to up to 90 seconds, or could be even more. And we've covered a few things in the past. Maybe you can count three breaths. Maybe you can feel the weight of your body on the chair. Maybe you can notice things about the other person, the cut of their hair, the jewelry that they're wearing, what their eyes are doing. Focus on the tone of their voice. Focus on your breathing. But what we're basically doing is we're distracting ourselves so that those stress hormones dissipate, so that we can then go back to our sage brain, or resourceful parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. And then the third part of the self commander, also that we've talked about, is positive self talk. And self talk that admonishes us actually uses a lot of energy. When we say to ourselves, calm down, or you can handle this situation, you're actually putting a lot of pressure on yourself. Real positive self talk is talk that opens yourself up. And very often, you first have had to notice that you were in a limbic state. Second, you would have to distract yourself from what you were focusing on and calm down enough in order to respond to yourself. Gee, how can I respond right now with empathy? That would be a form of positive self-talk. Or what do I actually want to happen here? And by asking questions like, how can I respond with empathy? What do I actually want to happen here? Or what else could I say that would keep this a productive conversation? Questions like that tap into our sage mind keep us in Sage. And if we, and sometimes we can make a game of it. Like, okay, I know I'm going to say something. This person might get upset. When they get upset, I'm going to realize that it's something that's getting me upset. I'm not going to get myself upset. I'm going to be able to respond 5 times in that situation calmly, and when we make a game of it, we make it a lot easier for ourselves to stay in command, because if we expect to be able to give feedback to somebody and go into a collaborative mode, both parties have to be in Sage mode. And so, using that self commander, we first put ourselves in Sage mode and then let their mirror neurons go to work. And while we're in Sage mode, they're feeling the pressure from their mirror neurons. Hey, wait a minute, this person is calm. They're not attacking me. Let me be calm. Let me connect with this other person, um, and then proceed from a more collaborative bent. The toolkit for doing that, I find, there's two basic methodologies that I use. One is called nonviolent communication, and the other is called motivational interviewing. Nonviolent communication is a way of communicating to another person what's happening and what you'd like them to do in a way that's not threatening. That's nonviolent. Um, and uh, Nonviolent communication was, now I forgot his first name. I'm thinking it's Martin, but I know it's not Martin, but Rosenberg is his last name, um, who was the one who wrote the book called Nonviolent Communications. Nonviolent communications is four types of phrases and we're trying to communicate a desire we have for another person to do. The first is an observation statement to tell them what you noticed. Like, instead of saying you were late, to say, I noticed the report was submitted on Thursday instead of Tuesday. There's no judgment involved. That's just the fact. The report um, was submitted on Thursday, instead of Tuesday. And then, to convey, the second part is to convey a feeling. Okay, I feel concerned. It's about relating your feelings. And the interesting thing is sometimes we use the word feeling as opinion. So in this case, feeling is actually what we're feeling. I feel you're wrong. Stating an opinion is a judgment. I'm feeling concerned. I feel anxious. Those, I feel happy. Those are about my feelings. So anyhow, the first statement is an observation statement. The second is how I feel. I feel concerned because this impacts the team's timeline. The third statement is need. This is in general what your expectations are. Like, I have a need for reliability. It has to be something that another person can do, but it's not actually asking the person to do something. It's in general stating what your goals are. And then the fourth part of the nonviolent communication is the specific request, and this is often best requested in the form of a question or a suggestion rather than a statement. So, for example, would you be willing to check in with me on Monday mornings going forward? And so you put those together, and you have a way of communicating that that tends not to be as threatening, tends not to be as triggering. Uh, Observation, feeling, need, request, and here's how they might sound together. I noticed the report was submitted on Thursday instead of Tuesday. I feel concerned because it impacts the team's timeline. I have a need for reliability so we can meet our clients' goals. Would you be willing to check in with me on Monday mornings going forward? And of course, if the person says no, that doesn't mean you failed. What the no means is that you have not come up with a request. And even if you had said it as a statement, the person wasn't going to be doing it. It's a request that allows you to go back and ask some more questions to find out why. So that's the and we'll go into nonviolent communications a little bit more, anon. And actually, we have a post coming up this week on nonviolent communications. And then the second technique that I find that's very effective is a technique called motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a series of questions. So we've talked about motivational interviewing on some of the past Mind Shifting Mondays with Mitch. MI is a way to ask questions so that the other party starts convincing themselves to take actions. It was first used by social workers first used about 30 years ago to help people change from self-harming behaviors. And it's since been adopted, sorry, by teachers, by coaches, by psychologists, by managers, by parents. So motivational interviewing dances around triggers by making sure that the other person is a problem solver. So it doesn't become me against you with a problem. It becomes me and you trying to solve the problem. And some of the different types of questions that are asked are uh, hurdle questions like, what do you think is getting in the way of the Tuesday deadline? What are some of the ways that what do you think some of the problems are that have been causing whatever the situation is? And then value questions like, how does this fit into your goals, or how do the results that you're achieving fit into your goals? And then some perspective questions like, if you were in my shoes, how would you be handling this delay? Now, those types of questions are available on a handout, which you can download. And let me put the QR code on the screen for you. Okay, so this download then combines, a lot of the statements that are, nonviolent communication statements and MI questions into 50 questions or statements that change minds. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, briefly just go through a little bit about that document with you. Let me go to my screen, and you're not going to be able to see this that well, but you can always download the document. And so if you went to the QR code, you would get that you get this PDF downloaded, 50 questions that change minds. And if you see there's a there's a methodology here. You're asking these questions with genuine curiosity. You're connecting first, you're understanding second, and you're problem solving last. Um, you know, admonishing, don't skip straight to the solutions. And it's 50 questions. You're never going to be able to memorize 50 questions, but you might want to, these are broken down into different segments of questioning, and you might want to pick 3 to 5 questions for any particular conversation that you're about to have somebody. So you would start off a conversation first with questions that build rapport, and there are here are some questions. I'm not going to go into these in detail. Questions that build rapport. Once you started building rapport, you start asking questions to start understanding the situation. And there's a bunch of questions here that you can ask the other person to get explanations about what's happening. Once you start understanding the situation, you can ask questions about, to start understanding their and make them explore what their current thinking is. So, like, can you walk me through how that would work in practice if they have a particular idea? But other questions too about exploring their current thinking. And then you want to relate what their thinking is to their goals and values, like what's important to you, what would you like to happen. So you switch to questions relating to their goals and values. And then once you have their goals and values, then you examine where the misalignment is. The results that you're achieving, are those results basically what you're hoping in your goals and values? And if not, where are the gaps? So how might doing whatever it is that you're doing right now not getting you what you want? Or I guess that you want to happen is, and what they wanted to happen, and not whatever happened that didn't really work out, and confirming that. So there's a bunch of questions that you ask about examining misalignment, and then exploring different alternatives. And this is where we're going really into the problem solving, because here you and the other party are working together to figure out what to do. And so, some of the questions, there's a bunch of questions here, but what are some of the things we might try? Um, If you had no constraints, what would you do? And you'd pick one or two of these questions to ask, and then finally, confirming commitment, where which one of these do you think you're going to try, and how confident are you that you think you're going to try them? And so if you go back through these, let me go back to the top, and you kind of follow this format of building rapport, asking questions to understand the situation, asking questions to explore the current thinking, clarifying goals and values, examining where misalignments occur, exploring different alternatives, and confirming commitment. You get to the point where the person is receiving an idea of what they should be doing next, and not doing it in a format that's triggering. Now, having said that, and I'm going to stop sharing right now. Okay. Having said that, as you start this process, as you start the rapport building process, just remember the other person is probably already triggered. And so it most likely their first reaction is still, and maybe their second reaction, and maybe their third reaction is going to be defensive first. So as you start asking these questions and you detect that the other person is still triggered, but you're determined that you're going to stay calm and connecting. Okay. If they get defensive with "it's not my fault," you want to start with maybe some of the understanding questions. "I hear there were some obstacles. Help me understand what's happened." When the other person starts shutting down, you can like they may say, like, "Oh, just tell me what to do," in which case that they're not going to do it, right? They're just waiting for you to continue the argument. You want to give them back some autonomy. Well, like, what would you like to happen in this situation? And you get getting them talking. And the reason why these works is that these questions force the other person to start using their own prefrontal cortex, their own sage mind to answer. And because you're showing that you're in sage mind, their mirror neurons are working with them, and the questions are working with them to respond in kind. And that naturally de-escalates their limbic system. So just kind of looking at an interaction, let's say a colleague is consistently late to meetings. Well, the typical approach might be that I might say to the colleague, "You're always late. It's disrespectful." And then he or she might come back to me with, "Hey, I got a million things to do. You have no idea how busy I am." And that conversation just got off to a pretty rocky start. The mind shifting approach would be to start off with um, understanding that this other person is probably going to be frustrated. So to first ground myself first, and then to use some of the non-violent communications. Uh, you know, let's say the person's name is Sarah. Sarah, I've noticed that you've arrived about 10 minutes late in the last three meetings. I feel frustrated because we have to restart the agenda. Um, Now, even though that's a non-violent way of approaching things, Sarah is already triggered, and Sarah is probably going to respond with some, defensive response, like, "I'm just so overwhelmed right now. Why are you even bothering me?" And then because we or I have understood that we have to connect first, we might give some connecting statement, and some understanding statement, and showing that we trust the other person. Like, you know, it sounds like your plate is completely full right now. What would need to happen for a meeting time to feel like a help rather than a hindrance to your workload? And so, kind of switching from a positive statement that establishes connection to a moving forward question, which gets us both into problem solving. And the result over time is that Sarah's mirror neurons settle down. They acknowledge the fact that this other person is not attacking them, is collaborating. They kind of urge Sarah in this case, to collaborate, and she starts thinking about solutions instead of excuses. So, what to do? So, I think I'd like to assign a little bit of homework this week. If you want to put this in practice, first of all, download the 50 questions. I think that they're going to be very helpful. Second of all, if you don't subscribe yet to the newsletter, we're going to be doing an article about about giving suggestions, which will include a little bit deeper dive into motivational interviewing and nonviolent communications. So go to mindshiftingwithmitch.com and sign up for the newsletter, and you'll receive that. And then to practically try it, because unless we try things, we're just not going to we're not going to master them. Think ahead for the week. Identify what I would call a limbic partner, right? Somebody who is likely to trigger you for the next week. You know, it might be your spouse, it might be a child that you have, it might be a student that you have, it might be a coworker, it might be your boss, but just identify. Might be a parent. Identify somebody who usually triggers you. Pre-prepare. Resolve yourself that no matter what they say, you're going to be able to stay in sage mode, and then use a game. See how many times you can keep yourself commander in charge. Every time they say something piss off worthy, respond with a motivational interviewing question or a nonviolent communication or observation. And every time you do that, you score a point and see who wins. Can you score 5 or 6 points before you get upset? And if you do score 5 or 6 points, do their mirror neurons start leading them to a collaborative frame of mind rather than their defensive or angry trend of mind? And the goal is to trigger their mirror neurons until they accidentally start behaving like through their sage mind too. And this is a quick run through of something that's I guess 4 chapters in the book Mind Shifting Conflict and Collaboration. So you've heard of us talking about that book in advance. You can look it up. It's for sale on Amazon. It's a step-by-step guide that explains not just how we get into conflicts, but how we can turn them into opportunities uh, for to improve our ability to handle conflicts. And for your daily practice, you may want to download this link, this 50 questions that change mind guide that we discussed today. Um, Pick 3 to 5 questions that feel natural to you, and practice them until they become automatic. Next week, we're going to be talking about running some difficult conversations, how you can do that. And get positive reactions from other people so that they're also better able to handle situations. And until then, this is Mitch Weisberg signing off from Mind Shifting with Mitch, Mind Shifting Mondays with Mitch. And I hope to see you next week. Take care.